Now friends, the another things that are related to the concept of global south in international politics or the global south in world affairs. There are to explain about the concept of global south in international relations and the importance of the global south in international relations or world politics. There are multiple theories that explain the importance of the concept of global south in the discourse or in the dynamics of international relations. So friends, in that way, there are certain important theories that we need to discuss just to know or just to explain the basic concept of global south in the discourse of international relations. How these theories actually referring the or saying the concept of global south in the context of international relation. So friends, in that way, there are important theories, the independent like dependency theory, world system theory, modernization theory, and also the post-colonial theory and the constructive and global governance theory these are the important theoretical explanation or the theory or the model. With the help of that, we can explain the concept of global south, or we can understand the concept of global south more detail in nature or more in detail with the help of that sort of theories of international relations. So friends, in that way, the dependency theory is the very important theory just to know the concept of global south, why that the concept of global south emerged in the discourse of international relations, why we discuss that. So with that models or with that conception, theoretical explanation, that is the dependency theory, we would be in a position to know the conception of global south and how that the Eurocentric conception of international relations, how that was exploitative in nature. So friends, in that sense, the dependency theory is referring that the global south's underdevelopment is a result of its integration into the global capitalist system in a manner that perpetuate dependency on more developed nations, and it emphasizes the unequal exchange of resources and unequal power relation between global north and global south. So friends, that conception of dependency theory, as we have explained that sort of dependency theory in other classes of international relations, so we will not discuss detail about the dependency theory, but just to refer or just to understand the concept of global south in world politics with the help of that dependency theory, we will explain that theory in a limited way. So that friends, the dependency theory, for example, the writing of Samir Amin and other scholars that develop the concept of dependency theory. So in that context, this theory is talking about a kind of exploitation done by the developed nations, that is the global north, highly industrialized European nations and America also. How these nations is actually exploiting the resources and the economic system of these nations are controlled by the highly industrialized nations. How the natural resources are actually exploited not by these countries, rather the countries of the global north. So that dependency theory is actually talking about that there's a kind of exploitation, there's a kind of injustice that the third world nations or the developing nation is exploited by the industrialized nations or the global north. And these theories, the dependency theory is talking about that the development of the liberal democratic model, talking about that the development, the economic development of these third world nations or the underdeveloped nations is only possible when these nations are dependent over the liberal democratic model, which means that there must be a free flow of economy, there must be a kind of integration sort of economic system, free flow of everything. So in that way, in a real sense, that liberal system, liberal democratic system or the liberal open economic system, in that sense, they argued that if these third world countries integrated with the economy of the developed nations, which means that the globalization, liberalization are the example of that, only then the third world nations or the developing nations can develop their economy in the pursuit of the or in the line of the first world nations or the industrialized nations. But that dependency theory is actually critical about the liberal democratic system of economic engagement and the engagement or the open market system as are propagated by the Western conception of economic system, which is based on a kind of capitalist system. So that dependency theory is actually talking about that because of the integration, these third world nations or their economy, their economic resources are actually exploited by the north, by the nation of the north, that is the industrialized nation or the nation of the global north. Another important conception or the theory that are related to the kind of dependency theory or the extension of the dependency theory that explain the conception of global south, their exploitation in the international system, that is the world system theory. So why we discuss this theory? Actually, this theory is explaining the discrimination, injustice that is done by the global north against the global south, and because of that exploitation, the nature of exploitation, these nations, that is the nation of the global south, now emerge and group themselves to respond or to give a kind of critical to give a kind of response or the challenge to the hegemony and the dominancy of the European nations or including America as well. So with the how that is discriminated, how that that engagement, interactions, and how that the divide, that is the global north and global south, how that division is actually forcing the nations, that is the nation of the global south, to regroup themselves and make a kind of platform, a collective engagement to raise their voice in the international system, and that create a kind of importance of the global south, the concept of global south, and why that is why we also discuss the concept of global south as an important sort of development that emerged in the discourse of international relations. So the world system theory developed by Emmanuel Wallerstein, he also explaining similar sort of discriminations discriminations by the global north or the nation of the global north against the nation of global south. So he used the term, the Wallerstein using the term that whole nation system or the world system is divided into a kind of layers, that is the core and periphery, the relationship between core and periphery. So those nations that are highly industrialized, they make a kind of core, and those nations that fall not in the core, they are less economically developed and having the less industrialization. So these countries falling at the periphery of the circles of the periphery and core sort of relationship. And the economic resources or the natural resources which are there in the periphery, that are shifting to or the exploited by the nations of the industrialized nations, that creating or that constitute the core state. So there is a kind of exploitation by the industrialized nations, that is the developed nations, against the developing or the third world nation or the nation of the global south. So that sort of thing, for example, the cheap labor that is coming from the peripheral state to the core state, and the economic resources that are exploited by the industrialized or the developing nation. So that kind of division or the exploitation done by the global north or the nation of the global north against the global south. So that world system theory is also exposing the nature of discriminations between the nation of global north and the global south, and because of that reason, the global nation of the global south to respond a kind of challenge to the hegemony and the dominancy of global north or the nation of the global north. Another important theory that explain a kind of the issue of global south in the international system is the modernization theory. So that this theory suggests that the countries in the global south can develop economically by adopting Western style of modernization, including industrialization, technological advancement, and political liberalization. It assumes that development follows a linear path and that emulating the practice of Western nation, and that will lead to a kind of progress in the case of global south, which means that the concept of modernization is actually what is actually the westernization, which means that the level of political development and the model of political development, the economic kind of economic activities or the model of economic activities. So those sort of political development, the political models and the economic models adopted by the Western countries, that we call as the first world, so-called first world countries. So the system, the economic system, the political system or the political model that are achieved by these countries, if the third world countries or the nation of the global south adopt that, then only there is a possibility of the economic development and political stability in the part of the nation of global south. So that modernization is equal to westernization according to that sort of modernization theory, and that theory argued that if the nation of the global south adopt the models, the economic and political models of the first world nations, that is the developed nation, then there is a possibility of the development and political stability of the global south nations, global south nation. So in that regards, friends, that westernization is a western under this modernization theory, that modernization theory, in the name of modernization theory, the western dominancy is actually imposing in the part of the global south. So that is another a kind of exploitation and the imposition of the values, economic system, economic values, the political model and the political values imposed by the Western countries or the Western developed nations on the third world nations or the nation of global south. So that also, that awareness is also one of the important factors for the development of the concept of global south. Another important theories that are related to the concept of global south is the rise of the global south is the post-colonial theory. So in the post-colonial theory, the criticize the legacies of the colonialism and imperialism, and this theory argued that the global south marginalization is rooted in the colonial exploitation and the imposition of the Western culture and political system. They highlight the importance of decolonization and reclaiming indigenous identities and knowledge. This is another important factors that explain the rise of the global south in international system. As friends, as we discussed in the initial discussion of this particular lecture, that the characteristic, one of the important characteristics of these third world nations or the nation of global south is that the colonial experience, the colonial history and colonial experience, which is more exploitative in nature, was more discriminatory in nature. And in the way of colonialism and imperialism, these nations of the European powers or the imperialistic colonial power, they try to impose their political models and also the economic models and their social and the values of the human rights as well on the part of the nation of the global south. So friends, in that way, after that getting independence from the colonial masters by these countries of the global south, they are now arguing that in the name of the colonial system, that is the white man concept of white man burden theory, that they have the responsibility, the nation of the global north, that is the industrialization or the European nations, having their moral responsibility to civilize the nation of the third world nations. So in that regards, they try to impose their values, political, economic, social, religious and other sort of values in the part of the global nation of the global south. So because of that process of post-colonialism, means the awareness, the level of economic development achieved by these nations of the global south, and also the political stability, the alternative political stability that suited to these particular nations of the global south. Now they are, because of that awareness and also the social, political, economic movement which happened in the part of the nations of the global south, because of that development, there was a kind of awakeness in the part of the nations of the global south that the colonial system was more exploitative was nature, discriminatory in nature, and because of that reason, these nations rejected values which was imposed by their colonial masters over the global south nations, and now they are trying to regain their political values, their economic values, which are more indigenous in nature, more suitable to the knowledge system, political system, economic system and social values to these particular nations of the global south. So that post-colonial kind of theory is another kind of explanations about the rise of the global south in the discussion or in the debate of international relations. Another important concept or theory that explain the concept of global south is the concept, or the rise of global south is the concept of constructive theory, or the constructive approach to look at the issue of global south in the discourse of international relations. So friends, in that regard, the constructive theory, they arguing that it is the international, in the international relation, state are the main actors, but state do not have the rational choice. The statecrafts do not have their preferences are not autonomous in nature. Rather, their preferences, their policies, the making of policies, or the policy choices are affected or influenced by the various ideas, various norms that prevail or that happening in the international system. So that ideas, or that ideology, ideas, norms and identities, these are the construction and that constructed by the European powers, or the highly industrialized nations, or the developed nations. And the nations or the policy makers of the third world countries, they are actually adopting the values or the ideas, norms, or norms that prevailed in the international system. So in that way, the constructive theory is critically examining that point of view, and they are arguing that because of that adoption of the norms, ideas and the values which are propagated by the developed nation, that are actually discriminatory in nature, and that are giving more favor to the northern country, or the country of the global north. And with the help of that, with the help of propagating that ideas, norms in the social system or the world system, they are actually controlling the rest of the countries in the global international system or the global system. So that constructive theory is another sort of explanation that the discriminatory practices done by the global north against the global south, and because of that awareness on the part of the global south or the nation of the global south, they actually making their argument, their influence, or their place, they searching their place in the functioning of the world system or the global system. Another important theoretical explanation that explain the rise of the global south or the issue of global south in international relations or the world politics is the global governance theory. So friends, in that way, we can make out that the global governance system, as we explained, that there are various global sort of governance institutions. For example, international organizations like United Nations. Earlier also we had the League of Nations, and many other sort of multilateral organizations or the institutions as well we have in the international system. For example, IMF, for example, WTO, for example, many similar sort of economic and political sort of institutions or the multilateral organizations we have, where where all nations are expected to cooperate on the basis of or engage on the basis of equal participation. But friends, in in a practical sense, what we find that in the functioning of these sort of multilateral organizations or international organization, it is the dominancy we find in the case of functional part of these multilateral organization, and that dominancy and the hegemony or the control or the control by the developed nations or the industrialized nations. So friends, in that sense, we see because of the rise of the various nations of the global south or the third world nations, for example China, for example India, for example Brazil, for example South Africa, and also that Russia and Japan and Korea. So because of the rise of these countries, economic rise and also high economic growth, political stability, so these nations, because of the rise of these nations trying to influence the dynamics or the decision making process of the international governance system. So these countries try to make more democratic international system, and they are demanding for more democratic and more engaging and transparent kind of international system. So they wants to having the reform, the structural reforms, as well as the kind of functional reforms as well, so far as just to engage these countries in the decision making process of the international system that we call as the governance system. So in the global governance system, the nations, the third world nations or the nations of the global south or the countries of the global south, they trying to assert their point of view in the functioning or in the global governance systems as well. So because of that, these are the important theoretical explanations, and with the help of that we can make out a sense that why the concept of global south emerged as an important debate and discussion in the discourse of international relations. What is the basic reasons of the rise of the global south in the international system or in the international relations. So that importance and the reasons and the understanding about the concept of global south rise and the demand for the more engagement of the global south in the nation of the global south in the governance system. So these actually making a kind of sense that why that global south, the issue of global south is become very important so far as the discussion or the dynamics of or the nature of international relations is concerned. So the important reasons or the basic philosophy of the emergence of the global south or the discussion of the global south in international relations is to make the international system or the global governance system or the world politics more democratic in nature and more equal in nature and also more transparent in nature by the injection or by the inclusion of the global nation of the global south in the dynamics of international relations or in the world politics. So the basic objective of the concept of global south is to make the international system more inclusive and more democratic in nature and give much importance or the equal importance rather to the nation of the global south in compared to the global north. So there must be a kind of equal participation, democratic participation and the equal engagement to get the equal benefit in the discourse or in the dynamics of international relations or world politics. So friends, now up to in this particular lecture we discuss about the concept of global south, the reasons for the emergence of the global south, how the global south, what are the basic characteristics of the concept of global south and the various theoretical explanation related to the concept of global south. So these are the things that we discuss in this particular lecture about the concept of global south or the issue of global south in world politics. Now friends, in the next lecture, which is again related to the concept of global south, is the contemporary world order and the global international relation. So this is another important things or the important topic that also emerge in the contemporary discourse of international relations. So in this first lecture we discuss about the concept of global south in world affairs, how we can understand and why that concept of global south emerge in the discussion or the discourse of international relation. So in the impact of this issue, the issue of global south, the basic objective of the global south, as we discussed that the basic philosophy or the basic purpose of the issue of global south in international relations or world politics is to make the international relations more inclusive and more transparent and more democratic in nature. So in that regard, in this particular lecture we will discuss, in the second lecture we will discuss about the contemporary world order and the issue of global international relations. So thank you very much friends, and in the second lecture we will discuss on the contemporary world order and global international relations. Thank you very much.